Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be going over Chapter 1 of the American Pageant titled New World Beginnings from 33,000 BCE to 1769. We're going to be using the 16th edition of the American Pageant. If you have an earlier or later edition, don't worry, the content's going to be the same. To start off, here are the key concepts. These are located at the beginning of every chapter in the American Pageant. What I like to do is connect the key terms in the chapter to each bullet point, and this will really help you organize information, so I highly recommend you do it. So first off, let's talk about what's happening pre-Columbus. You have nomadic Eurasian hunters who crossed the Bering Isthmus, this land bridge that later disappeared, for 25,000 years, which led to the creation of many diverse tribes, cultures, and religions. You should know about the Incas in Peru, the Mayans in Central America, and the Aztecs in Mexico, who relied on the cultivation of maize to sustain a large population. In fact, it was quickly produced using three-sister farming, which is where you would grow beans, squash, and maize on the same cornstalk to save field space and maximize profits. This eventually spread to America and transformed nomadic, hunter-gatherer tribes into sedentary ones. In other words, tribes would settle in one place and live there instead of moving to various locations. Some other tribes you should know about are the Sioux in the Midwest. They hunted bison because there was a lack of natural resources. The Pueblo Southwest Indians created advanced irrigation systems. These were one of the sedentary tribes that had to grow acres and acres of crops, and obviously you can't hand water all of those, so they created an irrigation system to effectively water all of their crops efficiently. But one tribe you should definitely know about are the Iroquois in the Northeast area, and they developed a confederacy known as the Iroquois Confederacy. This organization was made up of 6 tribes, and they became so powerful both politically and in terms of their organizational skills that they became a menace to other tribes and even Europeans. However, unfortunately, it eventually disbanded because it wasn't able to sustain. And during this time, you should note that there is a lot of expansion efforts. In fact, it really all starts when Christian crusaders faced conflicts in foreign lands. They began to gain exposure to these new goods, and this fueled efforts for European expansion. In fact, expansion was inspired by a lot of factors. For example, you had these middlemen who were placed along vital trade routes, and they took a large part of the profits with their fees. Back then, there was this one single route that was the most efficient for getting goods from one place to the next. Middlemen knew that this would be a well-traveled path and were purposefully placed there in order to exact a fee out of everyone who passed. And this became very profitable for them, which further inspires people to look for other solutions and other routes. In fact, some obstacles to exploration were overcome with the caravel, and this was a ship that could sail more closely to the wind, allowing Portuguese explorers to travel through new routes and discover new areas. Really excited about trying to find these new routes. There are new inventions during the Renaissance that are really furthering this, and they're feeling very inspired to find new places, find new goods. Some examples of this, you have Bartholomew Diaz, who rounded the southernmost tip of Africa. This previously could not have been reached, and it provided a new route, new places to see, new places to colonize, unfortunately. You had Vasco da Gama, who went to India and returned with jewels and exotic spices, again fueling this appetite for new foreign goods. But one story you should definitely know about is that of Hernan Cortez and the Aztecs. And this is post-Columbus, but I thought I might as well include it here because we talked about the Aztecs on this slide. And essentially what happens is this explorer named Hernan Cortez goes on this expedition to Mexico City, where the Aztecs live. And Montezuma, who's the Aztec emperor, believes that Cortez is a god and gives in to all his requests. There was this legend that said that the god Quetzalcoatl would come back, and Montezuma believed that the legend was fulfilled and Cortez was a god. He soon realizes that Cortez is in fact a greedy explorer and tries to drive him out on Noche Triste, which is sad night in Spanish, but Cortez lays siege on the city and they're forced to surrender. Soon after this incident, you have Francisco Pizarro, who attacked the Incas, and he brought many precious metals back to Europe, and the growth in the European money supply eventually leads to capitalism. Okay, so now let's talk about post-Columbus. Columbus arrives in 1492, and things go downhill very quickly. But to start off, why did he come? Well, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain sent Columbus west to compete with the Portuguese explorers. At this point, The Portuguese were really dominating the exploration of the New World, and Spain, along with other countries, wants to get in on the action and wants to explore as well. And this was facilitated by the Renaissance we mentioned earlier. It created new inventions and inspired scientific exploration. People want to know more about the world they're living in. They're questioning commonly held beliefs. It's a rebirth of ideas, and people want to know what's out there. You also have this idea of gold, God, and glory. These were really motivators for explorers. They wanted to find gold and get wealthy. They wanted to spread Christianity, which is where God comes in. They wanted to civilize, quote unquote, the natives and make Christianity the dominant religion. And glory. They want to be famous for their discoveries. And all of these will play a role in how these conquistadores treat the natives that they encounter. You should also note that the discovery of gold in the Americas led to the enslavement of natives in the encomienda system. This was a brutal system, which we'll talk more about in a bit, that completely abused the natives and exploited them for profit. The Spanish, happy with their new findings with the Americas once Columbus arrives, establishes control of the area with the Treaty of Tordesillas. They are making sure that the Portuguese, who also later come, get only a portion of the land, and that Spanish controls the majority of the area. And the treatment of the natives, or rather the mistreatment of the natives, leads to some debate. In fact, the Dominican priest Bartolome de las Casas calls it unholy, which is super ironic because, as we mentioned before, spreading the word of God was one of the motivators for explorers to, quote, colonize the Americas. So when a priest is calling it unholy, it's kind of ironic. And it really shows how religion is used as a justification depending on the side you're from. Columbus said that it was for spreading religion. In fact, he employed this theory called ethnocentrism, which was the idea that one religion, in this case Christianity, was superior to all others. That was his justification for the mistreatment of natives. They needed to be taught how to be civilized and Christianized. However, the natives do rebel in Pope's rebellion, and they show that they will not let Christian missionaries suppress their native customs and religions by killing priests and burning churches. They're doing exactly what the conquistadores did to them. They're burning down their places of worship and showing them that they will not be suppressed. So all of this raises the question, was Columbus good or bad? And before we even talk about that, you should note that there was something called the Columbian Exchange, which was a transatlantic exchange of goods and ideas between the Old and the New World. Once Columbus arrived, obviously he brought things with him, and when he went back, he took things with him as well, and both sides benefited from this exchange. So some pros: food from the New World revolutionized the European diet and fueled population growth. Columbus gave the natives cattle, which also transformed native life. However, despite these benefits, the cons definitely outweighed the pros. For example, a lot of animals from the Old World had diseases like smallpox that the natives weren't immune to, which led to a steep decline in the native population. Columbus also intentionally terrorized the natives in the plantation system, brutally punishing them when they didn't meet impossible quotas. They had to collect a certain amount of gold every day, and when they didn't live up to it, they would be punished, sometimes even killed. This cruelty is also seen in the Battle of Acoma in 1599, where the Spanish abused the Pueblo natives and cut off the foot of survivors. They're being cruel simply because they can be cruel, and they're exercising the power they have over the native. However, you need to note the nuance in this situation. In fact, there's this idea called the Black Legend, and this is the misconception that Columbus had an entirely negative impact on the natives. Remember, this is not entirely true. He did change their lifestyle, and he was responsible for creating mestizos. These were mixed-race people of both European and native descent. In fact, in Mexico and other Latin American countries, they don't celebrate Columbus. They celebrate Dia de la Raza, which is Day of a New Race. Columbus helped create a new race. Okay, well, that'll do it for this video. Here are the credits for how we got everything you just saw. Thank you so much for watching. Comment below if you have any questions, and please be sure to like and subscribe. It tells us that this video helped you, and it will help us make content in the future.